And recording's there, so we're all good. People will be coming in now. Gina and Treasure, you may want to go off camera until it's time. Hi, everybody. We'll begin in about 3 minutes past the hour. Thank you for attending. Welcome, everybody. We'll begin our webinar in about 3 minutes past the hour. We're just letting everybody come in and settle in. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you here. We'll begin in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
We will begin our presentation at 3 minutes past the hour. We're just letting our group come in and settle in. Welcome, everyone. We are just letting folks come in and join us. We'll begin the webinar at 3 minutes past the hour. Good afternoon, and welcome to the impact of partnering with state entities and family-run organizations. I'm Gail Cormier, the project director of NASTAC, the Family Center of Excellence. I am happy to introduce our two facilitators from Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State Family Run Executive Director, Ruth Fox, and the Pennsylvania State Representative, Treasure Gallagher. They will tell you more about themselves when they begin their presentation. At the end of the webinar, when you leave in this meeting, you will be redirected to complete a short feedback survey using the link provided. The survey will help NASTAC continuously improve our webinars And it also fulfills our SAMHSA funding obligation to provide them with important data required by our contract. Please note, NASPAC does not offer CEUs. You will receive a certificate of completion after the survey is completed. I would like to take time to thank SAMHSA for allowing us to share this information with you today. And again, thank you for joining us. It is now time to begin this important discussion, and I'll turn this over to Ruth and Treasure. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi,
Ruth,
everyone.
do you want to introduce yourself a while?
Yeah, my name is Ruth Fox. I'm the CEO of Allegheny Family Network in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm very happy to be here with you today and share my experience of working with state government.
Hi, I'm Treasure Gallagher. I work for the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services in Pennsylvania in our policy area. And my role is to work and lead and assist peer services across the Commonwealth. All right, Ruth, just let me know when you'd like me to move slides for you.
We'll start by looking at our objectives for this webinar. So the learning objectives today will be nonprofits do need the support of government to develop societal solutions and create sustainable change. We also, it's a way to learn to boost organizational efficiency, increase organizational effectiveness, and drive broader social and systems change. State government to discuss helpful nonprofit organizations in the community. The government is a sovereign entity that has operating authority over formally chartered and informal organizations in its jurisdiction. And how do we decrease the power dynamics there? So those are some of the things we're going to discuss today. If you want to move on to the next slide, Fraser. So as the CEO of a family organization, I had the job of figuring out ways to connect. And so I just started asking questions. As a family organization and as a stakeholder, I needed to find a way to connect with the state. And why did I need to do that? And what are the benefits of doing that for a family organization? State government, of course, manages funding for behavioral health services for children's adults and older adults. So funding is an important issue for a family organization. So that was a hot topic. By defining which person or persons lead projects at the state level, the family organization will have at least one point of contact. So you have to work and find out who is going to be your kind of point of contact there. An example of that for me was Treasure was hired as a peer service representative for Pennsylvania. This also helps family organizations identify who they need and want to become their champion in the work that you're going to be looking to do. So, so you got to look, you got to identify someone. Those are some of the reasons why and the benefits of doing it. Next slide. Finding ways to connect. By learning the chain of command in the state and kind of learning how the state operates is very, very important. And understanding the processes and the procedures, a family organization, it's better to navigate the system and decrease our frustration. Having these contacts and building the relationships in this venue is so important, I think. And, you know, we're going to talk later on in the slides a little bit about how do you get there? How do you get to that point where you can have a bit of a relationship with folks that are in the state, and how that can affect kind of your mission for being there. It provides opportunity for family voice and rollout of effective services for families. And so that, of course, is my passion, and that's one of the things that I wanted to see happen. And so I was finding my way. With routine contacts and relationship building, there are more opportunities to participate on committees for things such as reviewing funding priorities, funding streams for specific services, and requests for proposals. This connection is beneficial when certain funding streams require stakeholder participation. So there's funding streams out there that actually require stakeholder participation. And so as you build these relationships, people recognize you then, and you get asked to sit on committees and help in all these different kind of ways. So that's very important as well. Next slide. So I have done my investigation work. What do I do now? So I've investigated things. I knew what I needed to do. So here's 6 steps that I come up with that I had to really make happen to be able to get there. I had to show up. And so no matter how busy I was and what was going on at the family organization, which, as most of you know here that are running family organizations, it can be a little busy at times. We do a lot of work with not probably enough people, and everybody has multiple responsibilities and, you know, lots to do. But to get where I wanted to be, I needed to show up, and I needed to be consistent, because when people would see me, all of a sudden I become someone they know. You know, they hear my voice, they see me, they know I'm concerned, they know I want to participate. And so, you know, you begin to build those relationships because people just get to know you. And I started learning everything. I started soaking it all in. So when I would go to things, I would just get as much information as I could. I would ask questions. I tried not to be that obnoxious advocate, but I tried to ask questions nicely, and maybe at lunch, I would start asking different people different things just to find out how things worked. So I started learning everything. And I also wanted to be strategic in what I was doing. Since I ran a family organization, what I really cared about at that point, I care about a lot of things, but what I was caring about at that point was families who were raising children with mental health and behavioral concerns. So I wanted to strategically place myself so that I could begin to have some input in what was happening in that area of mental health. And then I needed a champion. I needed someone who understood me, who got what my mission was, who understood the need that was out there and what I was trying to do. So that was very important to me too. So I had to find that kind of right person at the state who I felt would be able to be my champion in what I was trying to accomplish, and hopefully what they felt was a good thing as well. And then what did I have to do? I had to give. Now I had to, once I got involved, once I got strategically where I needed to be, I had to begin to give. I feel like I've been giving all my life, but then now there's a specific purpose and a kind of a, I don't know, maybe a dream that you have for systems change or how things could be better for families and children, and see that kind of come to pass, hopefully. So those are the 6 steps I wanted to make sure that I was able to do and do them very effectively. So it took time. It didn't happen overnight. If you want to move to the next slide, Treasure. So partnering with state government. Let me see here. How I made my way to partner with state government. Wow. So I investigated, I found out about it. And I found out about the Office of Mental Health Substance Abuse Services, which in Pennsylvania is called OMSAS. And then I found out about the Mental Health Planning Council. And this was identified as a way to make a contact. So I really felt that if I could get involved with the Mental Health Planning Council as a stakeholder, as a family member, that I would be able to make some of the steps that I really think I needed to make. So the next step, what did I need to do? I needed to attend. So I showed up. It's one of the it's one of the 6 steps that I mentioned earlier. And I was a Sunshine member for almost 5 years. 5 years, I went consistently. And while I was there, I continued learning more and more and more about how the state works, how it operates. I was amazed at some of the things that happened during those meetings. Some of the people from the state that I seen in those meetings was very impressive to me. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the slides. And so I just kept for 5 years soaking everything in because I wanted to learn. And then I applied to be on the Children's Committee, to be a Children's Committee member, and made it in 2018. At that time, I was actually raising 2 of my grandchildren who had mental health concerns and was back in the system, even though I really thought I did my tour of duty already, but I found myself doing it again with grandchildren. And it was a pleasure to be able to have them and to help them. I had them for about 4.5 years. But during that time is when I got on the became a Children's Committee member for the Mental Health Planning Council. It was strategic for me. It's where I needed to be, right, to do the work that I was trying to do to help families across Pennsylvania. And then I got connected to my state champion in that process. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in following slides, but that was a wonderful thing as well. And now giving my time and effort to change systems and helping to improve services. And so that's what it's about for me at this point in my journey. Next slide. Okay.
All right. Do you want me to do this one?
Yeah.
Ruth, or do you want to?
No,
All right. So for those of you that may not know, and I'm guessing probably most of you do, I think a lot of states have some form of this type of committee, but in Pennsylvania, we do call it the Mental Health Planning Council. As Ruth had been saying, that that group of individuals divides up into 3 subcommittees. So we have children's, adult, and older adult. So we have meetings of those subcommittees, and then they all come together for a larger meeting regularly as the Mental Health Planning Council. So we also it was really important that we had a lot of stakeholders there and that we were very planful when this Mental Health Planning Council was being created. And one of the things initially, that was identified that we needed to do was that we needed to have the following. So those things there on the slide. So we wanted to have the youth, the adult and older adults who were being served. We needed to hear from family members. We needed to hear from providers, advocates, professionals, and or their respective organization, as well as, the state agencies or the governmental organizations that were going to be part of it. So I can't take credit, of course, for the Mental Health Planning Council, but it has been extremely effective, I think, for Pennsylvania, because it was not the only by any means, but one of the larger formalized meetings that was held where we brought all of these stakeholders together and, got to see each other's faces, got to know the names, like Ruth said, and it started other discussions and it started other relationships, when we were working on some of the same projects. So for us, the Mental Health Planning Council is very, very important. And again, I'm sure you probably have something in your state. I'm not sure what it might be called though, but for us, that's what we use. So the opportunities, as I said, for our Mental Health Planning Council, we have regularly scheduled meetings. And we have, as I said, we have it set up so that the subcommittees meet in the morning, and then we come back in the afternoon, and there's discussions about what the different subcommittees have done, thoughts, questions, work. So all of that gets to come out in our regular meeting. What we also are really proud of, and I think has been really helpful, is that our deputy secretary, and of course, there tends to be change over the years, but each of our deputy secretaries have always carved out time to not only sit in the Mental Health Planning Council, but also they touch base in with each of the subcommittees. So, they give each subcommittee a time and say, hey, I'd love to meet with you guys from, 9 to 9:30. And then they'll move to the next group, 9:30 to 10. But being able to sit in, answer questions, obtain data, whatever it might be, has been extremely beneficial. And everyone has kind of the agenda, so to speak. And they have for us, we all have the Zoom meeting link or whatever we're using, Teams meeting link. And we do that so that we can jump in and out. So perhaps there's something that, for me working on peer services, there's something that the Children's Committee is working on, and then I may jump over to older adult, and I also may jump into the adult pieces. So it allows us that flexibility too, to talk specifically to those subcommittees. The other things that have come from that is other subcommittees are formed if necessary. And I think Ruth is going to talk about this, but one of the examples is that there is a wonderful group of passionate advocates for the family work. And they were sitting in various places in the Mental Health Council and sitting in one of the 3 subcommittees. And they really wanted to and needed to come together and focus on this one thing, family peer and family support. So they created an additional subcommittee off of the Mental Health Planning Council to be able to do that, which was really helpful. One, for me as the state agency, it very clearly allowed me to see who our champions were, who are, the people we wanted to talk to, our stakeholders, because they have kind of already said, hey, we're here, this is our focus. So it was really easy, for me to go, oh, well, there you go. If I want to start hearing about family peer, what we need, here's where I can start. So the Mental Health Planning Council is great for that as well. We also bring in speakers. It's also an opportunity for all the stakeholders to get updates, to ask questions, to do a little bit of education. So we'll bring in subject matter experts and things during these meetings as well, if it's asked. and as I said, the opportunity for communication and networking, you know, and seeing the faces and being able to have those contacts, you know, so you can email them after the meeting or whatever it is. So it's been a great place for stakeholders to meet with the state agencies, but also for us as a state agency to be able to identify, you know, our stakeholders and our folks, and what they're passionate about. So when we have questions, you know, or we want to know something, we can go to them, we can reach out to them and ask. So lots of different ways you can do that. Pennsylvania, as I said, does the Mental Health Planning Council. So I'll move it back to you, Ruth.
Thank you. Yeah, Family Voice in Pennsylvania. How do we impact systems change? We participate. And most of us that are part of family organizations really have probably been doing this for a while. And we might have been doing it at our local levels or county levels, you know, trying to impact the systems there as much as we could. But we participate when there's an opportunity. We participate in that opportunity. When there's hearings about public policy, we try to participate in those things and bring the family voice there. So participation is a huge piece of this whole process. And now it's at a state level. So the Mental Health Planning Council's Children Committee formed a subcommittee, and that's what Treasure was referring to. There was a group of family members who were part of the Children's Committee, and we were very passionate about moving family peer support forward as a billable service in Pennsylvania. So I joined the subcommittee. So you have to always be present. You have to always attend. You have to always be there. When the opportunity's there, take it. So I joined that subcommittee, and at first, Treasure was not a part of that subcommittee, but initially Crystal Karenchak, who is a family advocate in Pennsylvania, longtime advocate, who works for PA Care Partnership right now and works with OMSAS and actually works with Treasure on moving family peer support forward. Crystal Karenchak was kind of running those meetings at that point. And, you know, we were very passionate about our work. Anything they asked us to do, man, we were on it. We wanted to get it done. We were very excited about some movement. We felt like there was finally some movement happening and we could be a part of that. And then the state hired a new employee, and that was Treasure Gallagher, and she was the peer services program rep. And we got introduced to her. She said she's going to be attending these meetings now. So I thought, oh, this is so wonderful. So now I can get to know Treasure, who's going to be, she's part of the Bureau of Policy. And I can start, you know, really getting to know her to get this thing moving forward. So before I knew it, that subcommittee, after Treasure came, was turning into an OMSAS Family Peer Support Services steering committee. And that steering committee would be selecting the needed participants across the state. So I felt like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Because now I can't just join this committee. I have to get selected for this committee. And so, of course, I was very hopeful that, you know, my advocacy work prior to that would make a difference and I would get selected. And I did get selected to be a part of that exciting new steering committee in Pennsylvania, and was so happy to be on there to really make family peer support services across the lifespan, which is really the goal in Pennsylvania, to be billable within the next 3-year time frame. Although we think we may have to roll it out in some phases, I believe, is what we're thinking now, but the goal is to get it all done. And so I'm actually sitting on the committee for the adult and older adults and children, because what I understand is our children grow up. So next slide.
Okay, so as Ruth was saying, so just to give you a little history and background, so you know, I've been with the state for 20 plus years. I don't know, been a long time. But my work started in the realm of substance use disorders, individuals that had substance use disorders. But then I transitioned and spent a very good portion of my state career working in children and youth and juvenile justice for Pennsylvania. That's kind of all wrapped into one. So it wasn't until about, oh gosh, year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago, that I had moved over to OMSAS. Of course, I had worked with them in the past, but not worked for them. So when I made this transition over, you know, you get used to doing larger projects and you know how that goes. So when I came over, I thought, you know, oh my gosh, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to do, but I also have to figure out like what are my priorities? You know, what are the priorities from my boss? Like, what am I to work on? And then I have to figure out who are the key stakeholders that are going to help me do that? Like, you know, all these things that go through your mind when you start a new job. So as I came in, and again, I think part of it is I lucked out, and I have to give credit to the Mental Health Planning Council, because it gave me that opportunity to come in. I was able to sit back for a little bit. I was able to sit and listen. I was attending a whole bunch of different meetings, but I started seeing the same faces. And I started hearing the same people. And then there was the subcommittee, right? And I thought, oh gosh, that's us. That's like what we're going to do. So for me, it made it really, really easy to say, oh, well, I'm assuming this is going to be my stakeholder group. This is the group I want to talk to. And it was. But I think we needed to realize, and sometimes it's tough as a state, we really needed to realize, and I'm thankful that those in my chain of command saw the importance of it as well, is that it can't be done in a vacuum. Any good program and service cannot be done in a vacuum. And if you don't have a variety of stakeholders, less likely that it's going to be effective. It's less likely that it's going to continue and be long-term. And, you know, nobody wants a program to fail. So when we had kind of gone back and we said, okay, so OMSAS is telling me that they have this initiative to expand peer services. And I have this group of young men and young ladies saying, we need to do this and we're ready. You know, it made it easier. So then it was about taking the time. Just like Ruth said, she had to take the time to attend the meetings and to be consistent and to be there and participate. We then as a state need to take the time, and I know it's difficult, you know, like it is for the providers, to take the time to listen, to take the time to get our stakeholder group together, you know, and to listen to the frustrations, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then to move it forward. So that's what I did. I came in and I started sitting in with this group, and, you know, I was hearing the good, the bad, the ugly. Fortunate that the individuals in this group were pretty open, you know, to say, hey, this is our frustration, this is our anger, you know, kind of thing, whatever it was, to sit and talk to me about it. But they were also good in that they weren't blaming me. So I knew that any frustration that they had was from things previously, or, you know, from things just not being able to follow up for a number of reasons. right? And like COVID, that changed everybody's plans. So I think that was really important. So as we came together and I'm hearing them and hopefully they're hearing me, you start that relationship building. Hopefully you start some trust. So at that point, then we said, well, I know I have this fine group of individuals here, but if we're going to make a holistic, productive program, we're going to need more stakeholders. We really need to make sure that we're really planful. Let's get some more people involved. Thankfully, also at that time, I was doing some research to say, who can assist us? Because it is really, really beneficial to have an outside entity, so to speak. So not somebody necessarily that's in your state, not somebody that you work with regularly, but an outside entity that can look at you and say, well, have you ever thought about this? Or have you ever thought about that? You know, and they don't have a anything in the game necessarily, but to give feedback. So we reached out to Gail and Lachelle at that point and said, wow, can you help us a little bit? Can you be that bigger voice for us and guide us? So we did a collective impact. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's what we used. We got a lot of great information from Gail and Lachelle and our technical assistants. So that's what we kind of frameworked. We said, okay, we like this. This makes sense. And then as we were learning about collective impact, we were working with those few identified people, you know, so some of the people were real easy to grab and say, you have to be on the steering committee. But we also need you to help us be really planful about who else we call in. So we started to be really planful, and we were looking at things like the geographic location that these folks were from, urban, suburban, rural, the experience they were coming from. So we wanted to make sure that we had advocates. We wanted to make sure we had family voice. We wanted to make sure we had state voice, provider voice. We wanted to make sure that we were as diverse as possible. So sometimes we even went in as far as to look at, okay, do we have a male voice? Do we have a female voice? Do we have a voice from our LGBTQ community? You know, and trying to be as diverse as possible. So that's what we were working on. And, you know, we discussed this as a group, as we grew and as we moved forward. Then we decided, well, although we'd like to have 600 people on our steering committee, that definitely won't work. So we did finally have to cut it off and say, you know, okay, I think we ended up with like 25, which is still pretty large. But we said, okay, now we're set, let's move forward. So with that, and collective impact helped us a lot with kind of planning our next steps, as well as our technical assistance advisors. And we needed to go through the fundamentals. So as much as everybody wanted to like hit the ground running, get things started, we needed to do the basics. So it was really important that we all started talking through expectations. And as Ruth said, our expectation was this isn't just a meeting that you attend. Like, no, if you're stepping up to the plate, we're at it. We're meeting every 2 weeks, and there's going to be homework potentially. And Treasurer and Crystal could be calling you and bugging you, you know, about who knows what, you know. So we set that expectation. We identified roles. You know, for some people like Ruth, you know, we needed to talk about, okay, Ruth, you're an executive director, but you're also a family member. What role do we need you to be, you know, here in this particular group? And, you know, we tried to filter that out with each person. Not to say that their role couldn't change, but, you know, why they were being asked to this group and for that particular role. Then we went into a comfort agreement. And we really needed to be serious about that. Some people call them fundamentals, ground rules, whatever you want to call it. But we really needed to get real about, okay, if we're going to work together as a group and be meeting and getting this done, we really need to sit and talk about like, what are the rules? What things are okay and what things aren't okay. And that's really how we got into discussions about, we built a resource account, an email resource account, so that provided people the opportunity to ask us questions or to set up additional meetings with us. Maybe people that were struggling with a decision that was made or whatever it might have been. So we did that. We also talked a lot about transparency and confidentiality. So that goes into the next pieces. We wanted to be transparent. So we wanted people to know what we were doing. This was not a hidden agenda, that what we were doing was not, confidential, it's not like we couldn't talk about it. However, we wanted to be really sure that the messages that we're getting out were correct, but people were hearing the same thing. We also knew that there was going to be some discussions within our steering committee that needed to stay within the steering committee, because maybe we're going to be discussing it over the next month, right? So we're going to say, we're really clear about that. If it is something that we're going to ask you to not talk about right now, we're going to tell you that, right? And, then we're going to talk about once that decision is made, okay, well, let's talk about, can we share it now? And what could the impact be? And that was so critical for us, especially because not everybody could be on the steering committee. And there was a lot of people who were interested and really wanted to be there that had great ideas and great suggestions. So by being transparent, but really setting those kind of that confidentiality and those expectations, hopefully the members of our steering committee felt more comfortable about what they could take out, but also feeling really comfortable about being able to accept feedback and accept, resources or whatever from other people and bring it into the committee as well. So, and that took time. And I know for some, and even for me, sometimes I felt like it was an eternity, but it was needed. It was, it helped us so much in the long run. And, we're better, not perfect, but we're better now when we're championing for each other. We're talking about, for us right now, our biggest project is Family Peer. When we're talking about that they're hearing the same language, they're hearing the same thing from our steering committee and our subcommittee members. So extremely helpful. We also talked about consensus and final vote, because we knew that 20 to 25 people are not always going to agree. But at the same time, we needed to make decisions and move forward. So we had decided that we would hear from folks. We would listen to everyone. If we didn't have time to be able to listen to everyone via a meeting, again, that's where the resource account came in. It was like, contact us and we're going to set up a meeting. Crystal and I are going to talk to you. We want to hear what you have to say, so that you have that opportunity to provide that feedback and those thoughts before the final vote. And then, of course, we would have the final vote on things and allowing us to move forward. So I talked a little bit about the resource account. Again, that's been extremely helpful. We still have that in place. I think we probably use it less now because we're more apt to just, instant message or email each other and say, hey, what about this? Or, hey, I need to talk to you, which is a great place to be. And then I also talked about the opportunities for additional meetings. So again, you have to take that time for each other. We need the providers, we need the CEOs like Ruth to take that time, but we need to take that time to sit and listen as well, and to get that feedback from individuals, from stakeholders. Because if you don't, then again, you're going back to creating the program in a vacuum, and it's just not going to be effective. So that was from the state perspective, some of the things that we had worked on, and really the first, Ruth, probably a couple weeks, few months of us all being together and working together. That's where we started.
Yep.
Okay, so I will move forward and
I-
back to Ruth.
Video was going a little crazy there for a minute, so I hope it behaves. Okay, let's talk about some barriers and learning along the way. So there was that. And, you know, I was zealous. I was so excited about this steering committee and about completing this effort to have family peer support specialists across the lifespan in Pennsylvania. It was just, you know, that's something that's needed for years and years and years and years. And now all of a sudden you're right there and it's beginning and you're just so zealous about getting it completed. I think some of that is the fear of, oh, they might change their mind, you know, and we got to get it done quick before someone changes their mind or before someone new comes into office and doesn't like it, or, you know, all the things that we've kind of faced in the past. And, you know, so it just makes you want to get it done.
Yes, and to be fair, sorry, Ruth, I'm going to step in a second. To be fair, again, I was new to this particular program, but I had known that this was not new. These same advocates have been working on this for years. So, you know, I really needed to be fair and empathetic to the fact that they had started it quite a few times. And unfortunately, something else always arose. It was, yep, it was the change in governor. It was the change in deputy secretary. It was COVID. It was always something. So yeah, we had to take that into account. You know, and me realizing that, like, oh my gosh, Treasurer, we're not going to let something step in again.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, I was full of energy, I must say, to get it done. And then the steering committee, we were defining family and what does family mean? And of course, there was a lot of discussion about it, a lot of, you know, things came, different definitions, rewording it, that, you know, all that stuff that goes on when you're trying to define something. But myself and some other family orgs that were represented there didn't really agree with the definition. I felt like they were, well, not I felt like, but they wanted to take a vote on. And I was pretty disappointed because the vote passed with the definition. And I thought, they're not hearing our voice. They're not hearing what we have to say, because there was a lot of providers on the steering committee at that time too. And we all know we need providers and we love providers because our children need the providers. That's a wonderful thing. But as family members, we also know that there's certain things that we need too. And I wasn't seeing it in that family definition, and some other people weren't. So I felt a little disappointed about that, but they did the process. And it just so happened that I had to report out right after that at the Mental Health Planning Council, and I was still disappointed. And so when I was reporting out, I mentioned that I was disappointed with the steering committee's definition of family. And of course, Treasurer was present and she heard me. And Treasurer, I was so worked up after, I know you come on and you were talking, but I really don't know what you said, to be honest with you, because I just was so passionate about what I was saying. But I could hear in your voice disappointment also with me for sharing that at the Mental Health Planning Council. And so I feel like it was a definite learning experience for me. As long as I've been around, we can always still learn, right? And I learned quickly to follow protocol. So the RA account that was set up was where I should have voiced my disappointment. and not at the Mental Health Planning Council. And so, but still, I was allowed, my voice was allowed to be heard, right? So, you know, even though I didn't agree with it, everybody on the steering committee knew and understood that there was several of us that really didn't agree with the definition of family. And so they heard our voice, and I kind of busted it out at the Mental Health Planning Council, and I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't the appropriate place to do it. So, and then, you know, I thought, oh, Treasure's gonna be mad at me. Like she's gonna think, what did Ruth do, you know? And, but here we are today, right? And we're doing this sharing together, and we've been working together, continuing to work together on this steering committee. And I feel like Treasure, you know, really understood my zealous outburst at the Mental Health Planning Council, and was very gracious to me. As Families has been very gracious to the state through all our ups and downs and stalls and, you know, disappointments and all that kind of stuff. So we have to learn to be gracious to each other, I think, and to really find those patience, but know also when to speak out. And so I found my champion, and my champion is Treasure at the state, and I'm so happy to have gotten to know her. And I'm so happy that even though I disappointed her, she was still okay. And we still have a good relationship and are working well. And she's going to carry us to completion. I feel it. So I know that in Pennsylvania, we're going to have family peer support specialists to be billable services. Not very soon, but well, kind of very soon. Like it's been years and years and years.
Maybe in the way state defines, because we're pretty slow, maybe in the state timeline.
So, but she's working hard with us. Treasure's working hard with us. It's been amazing partnership, along with a lot of other people in that group. I don't want to leave out other people. It's not just me and Treasure. There's many other people in that group who put a lot of time and energy into what we're trying to do, and that everybody deserves credit for trying to get this through in the state of Pennsylvania. And I don't think it's going to be too long. So is there another slide? Yep, Treasure, you have this.
Yeah, so some of this we had already talked about, but you know, so I wanted to be able to talk to you for a minute. Ruth had done a great job in kind of how, from an agency, an organization's perspective, you know, trying to get in to talk to the state. Sometimes that is not easy at all to do, or to get somebody that you can talk to that can take the time to sit and really hear it. So, so there's some work, you know, there's definitely something, you know, that the state, there's some things we need to do as well. Like I said, I think as a state, we're remiss if we don't make sure that we have a lot of stakeholders at the table, especially those that are receiving the service at the table, whatever it is, as we're going through this. You know, as we're talking about creating a program, as we're talking about implementing a program, I think that's one of the biggest things. The other thing, just as Ruth said, that she needed to know who was championing this at the state, who was leading this at the state. The state also needs to look at, Pennsylvania needed to look at, well, who are my champions out there? So I need to find these individuals that are willing to listen to, that have a lot of contacts and have the ability to get the word out for us, the ability to gather information for us, and then also the ability to work through the barriers. So to work through the frustrations with each other. the calls going, what are you doing? Whatever it was, but to have those discussions, because as we know, things are decided or people think things are decided at the state level, right? And many people aren't aware of the processes or, how they came to be. So to be able to have people on the front lines out there supporting and being able to educate, like, oh gosh, I've talked to the state, or I sit on that committee, or okay, no, we did take that into account, and championing the state to some extent, but championing the programs is vital. And it really becomes vital in the points where, so let's face it, as states, sometimes our hands are tied in the sense that, perhaps a ruling comes down, perhaps a policy comes down, perhaps a law comes down and says, you must do this and you must do this way. So then at the state level, we have to come back and say, this is how we have to do it. And this is the way for us, Pennsylvania will do. And that may not always be popular. So I needed to know that I could come back to the individuals, to the Ruths in the group and say, guys, listen, here's where we're at. This is what's come down. This is the decision that was made, and we have to go with it. Now let's talk about, what that looks like. Let's talk about how we're going to get it out there to the masses. But let's also internally have this discussion and honesty about, okay, this may suck or whatever, or this might be really great, but it may change, our program and what we're doing right now. So you had to be flexible about that. And giving each other patience, as Ruth had said, you got to be patient. So they were patient with me coming in new to peer services, new to OMSAS. And I needed to be patient and allow them the time to talk to me, to let out some of that frustration, and for me to understand why they were pushing so hard, because it had been going on for so many years, but never met the finish line. So, that also goes into just building the relationships and the support and grace piece. The other thing we try to do is to be honest. I try to be very open with the group. If I think something isn't going to work, I'm going to tell them that. I'm going to say, hey, this may not work. We'll try it, but it may not work, and here's why. Or, hey, there are some things that we know that we can provide recommendations perhaps as a committee, but it doesn't mean that those recommendations are going to be accepted, and that the final say may not necessarily come from us. So we need to be real about that. We don't want to hide that, we need to talk about what we really want to push, or, acknowledging that this is only a recommendation, and processing through that. The other piece is, as much as I need to understand at the program level how things are actually working, I needed them to understand the state processes, because there's a lot of them. and we can't just assume, that people are going to give us patience and grace without explaining to them why we're asking for it. So when I said to Ruth and them, and I said, okay, guys, 3 years, Ruth and a few folks looked at me and said, excuse me? Oh, I don't think so. 3 years, you're crazy, And so reality was, we had to go through and say, guys, listen, this is a change in the state plan. Please understand this is going to probably take the rest of my life to do, and go through that. But we also tried to involve them as much as we can in some of those other meetings to help them understand our processes, and perhaps why they take the time that they do. Because again, that helps with the patience and grace. So I think I've covered most of what was in here, but very much the same things that Ruth was talking about from her side, trying to get to the state. We were also looking for from the state back to the agencies and providers.
Yep. Yeah, so it's been I just want to say it's been a wonderful journey with Treasure so far, and I think we have a little ways to go yet, Treasure. And I want to thank you for, I know it's your job, but I feel like you've really stepped up to the plate and made it something that you want to see completed as well. So that's important to all of us that are spouse.
Yeah, well, and let me say to everyone here too, that, at the state level, there's always something else, on that front burner. So
Yeah.
sometimes without Ruth and that group kind of being like, don't forget me.
Yeah.
We're asking, we want to know, keeps me focused too. So yeah, definitely needed.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing that I really don't think I said during my slides is that, not only have I got to know Treasure, but I know other people at the state level too. The director of the Children's Bureau, Scott Talley, I know Scott pretty well. So, when you're there and when you're going to the Mental Health Planning Council, you get to really know people. And the importance of the deputy secretary coming to the mental health planning advisory committees and really taking the time to sit down in each of those committees and ask us what we need to know from him or her, and also giving us good information that we can receive and take back. So, those things are kind of priceless once you get in there and you're able to build those relationships, make those connections, and get that information that's so needed in your family organization.
Well, thank you, Treasure and Ruth. We've got questions coming in, and are you ready for some questions? First of all, even before we ask the questions, I have to say, I am jealous of your relationship. As the former executive director of another state-run organization, I loved my state relationship with my state director, and we would travel around and talk just like this. And I have a pang of envy here, so I'm glad you're doing this. The other piece is I have personally been on the Mental Health Planning Council in the state of New Hampshire and in the state of North Carolina. And the Federation of Families has seen planning councils throughout the country. And yours is a really well-working council, but there are many others. And if your state, and all states do, get Medicaid, you have a mental health planning council. So with that point, I would like to ask the first question, and it says, when you say billable, are you talking about billable to Medicaid, or are you looking at additional resources such as private insurance?
Well,
Yes and yes. Go ahead, Ruth.
I would just say, I think we've talked about a lot of different opportunities for funding. And Treasure, you might want to expound on that a little more, but I don't think that's outside the realm necessarily, but.
Yeah, so, for Pennsylvania a lot, and I think probably for other states, we do tend to think, when you think of funding streams, we do tend to go right to Medicaid, and say, well, this, if it could be paid for, that'd be great. So yes, that was one of our primary goals is to do that and to, but we never want to lose the concepts of finding other funding streams, because there's going to be individuals that are not covered. There's going, you're always going to find that. And, you're never going to get all the money that you need through that type of billing. So we have been really, really careful to not focus solely on that. Now, and the other is, and I won't get into it too far, is that we've also had to kind of break in components, especially for funding. So it's a little bit different, the funding sources we can get for families of children versus for families of adults versus families for older adults. But yes, we are trying to take it all in. And, hopefully someday private insurance. That's going to be, that'll be our next initiative.
And I might add to that, I think that in the state of Pennsylvania, and I'm sure it's probably like this in other states as well, we like I operate a family organization without billable services in the state of Pennsylvania right now. So we've gotten program funding, and we're a $4.7 million without billable services. And so we will continue to try to get program funding, even if the state does become billable for those families who can't be served under billable services. And for some of the other things that we do, like trainings for families, events for families, support groups, like all those kind of things that may not quite be a billable service. So
Ruth, I think that's a really, really good point, that we're not only talking about building relationships just for billable services. Those relationships also get you connected for different kinds of funding and different funding streams, from substance use, child welfare. When you're sitting at the planning council and you're actually attending, you're not saying I'm a member, but I'm too busy, I can't. You can actually start building that relationship and knowing who to contact and developing and spreading that out. Ruth, I'm envious of your organization too. That's great that it's 4.4 million. We have another question from Nicolina's Wishes.
oh yeah.
Can you give me an example of how has the training changed as it is in development? Thank you, Patty. I guess it's from Patty. She wants to know, how did the training change as you develop?
So right now, I think Patty's talking about the Fredlo training that the state of Pennsylvania is using now.
That's what I was going to ask.
Years. And she's talking about that because I believe she took the training. And she's trying to start a family organization, and we're actually helping her in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. But the training may not change. The Fredlo training will remain the same. We may need to add some content to it.
Yes. So we also, one of the things that we have done along the way is we constantly bring our Pennsylvania certification board. So we have a separate certification board that holds our certifications, and that helps us build them, that's outside of us, which is incredibly helpful. And one of the things we had done was we had provided the Fredlo training to them at one point and said, please review, does this meet what you as a certification board look for? And then we had found out at that time that although it's very good, there were pieces and components that it was missing. So we now know that as we are building the training, especially for family peer, as Ruth said, it's going to be probably, I hate to say anything for definite because we haven't decided yet as a team, but Fredlo Plus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense too, because sometimes you have to really look what's pertinent for your particular state. And that might be missing. Just on the basis of self-promotion, the Federation of Families and NASPAC is in the process of doing 100% free virtual curriculum development for family peer specialists. It should come out in the summer, but it will be free of charge to anyone who wants to take it. It's all self-paced and online. But that's great. Question from Jill. Thank you for breaking the ground on family peer recovery. Ruth, what was your definition of family versus the final definition of family? And Treasure, family peer program billable with MA or health insurance? I think we covered that piece. So Ruth, you're up.
So I don't have the definition right in front of me. I can tell you what I felt was missing in the definition. And that was parent caregiver. I don't know how you can talk about a family without talking about a parent or a caregiver. So, we were really not happy with that. but it did pass, and we may revisit it down the road sometime.
Yeah, well, and I think it was really important. So one of the things we didn't say, and I probably should have, when we started this initiative, restarted this initiative, because they've been working on it for years. When it was restarted, we had initially decided to do lifespan, like get it and get it all at once. So we're talking children, adults, older adults. So when we were creating things like definitions, we were trying to be really careful that we weren't just talking about parents, right? Because, you know, as they get older, it might not be their parents, you know, and being really broad, and trying to make sure we're gathering the entire lifespan. We've changed that a bit in that now we're taking it in waves and pieces. So, you know, we have a primary caregiver group, right, that would look at that definition, and yeah, so it's a parent or caregiver. But now we also have a group that works on the families for adults and older adults, which may not necessarily mean parent or primary caregiver, you know, and encompass more people. So
That is true. Our groups broke into two different, our steering committee kind of is in two groups now. One working on families with, you know, parents and caregivers of young children, and the other one adults and older adults. So yeah, so that could change, but initially that's what it was. It disappointed me right away, but hopefully it'll get fixed.
Another question. I heard you were trying to diversify. How diverse are your committees? And can you speak on how you diversified a little bit more than what you talked about?
I'll tell you, we tried hard. But if I'm being honest and you look at our committees now, there's very little to no diversity, depending on, I guess, on how you look on it. If you're looking at it and you're saying male to female ratio, probably not real diverse. There's a lot of females, you know, that are doing the work. If you're looking at it from a race perspective, you're looking at white females that are involved in doing the work. Now, if you're looking at it maybe from geographically, like rural, suburban, and urban areas, we might be a little better there. We might be a little bit more versed in that. Part of what happened too was when we created the steering committee, I think that's when we were focusing on diversity. And I think we did a pretty darn good job, and we were pretty happy with that. However, over time, because now we're a year in, we've lost some folks, or you know, or the agencies or organizations have changed the representative that attends. And then when we broke down into the smaller committees, some people just don't attend the committee meetings. We only see them at the steering committee meetings that are annually. So that also changed the diversity of the groups. What we've done to try to combat that is we have asked from the very beginning, we had asked all of our steering committee members, and we had also started keeping a list of people and or organizations that were really interested, that had, you know, a stake in it, you know, that had thoughts. So we go out to them and we ask, you know, Ruth and all the people in the steering committee to continue to go out to them and talk to them. And what are their thoughts? What are their feedback? To try to make sure we're still getting, you know, a diverse group, and we're getting the proper feedback.
Ruth, I have a question for you. What would you suggest for family-run organizations struggling to make that type of connection? Is there anything else other than really trying to sit at the Mental Health Planning Council?
There's a lot of different ways. I did connect first. My first connections were for regional meetings in the state but it was for adults mostly. But I got I got to know people still. And so I was going to like Southwestern Pennsylvania regional meetings for mental health. And I think any place you can put yourself that is a state kind of run thing that you're welcome at as a stakeholder, like just put yourself in there. And, you know, and you'll still meet people, but those people, those are actually the people who told me about the Mental Health Planning Council. So, you know, because they knew what my passion was, you know, it was for families with children. And so they said, why don't you go, you know, be a sunshine member at the Mental Health Planning Council? So and that's what I did. And so I think anyway, like just get out there and talk and get to know like where you can start at the county level. If you're connected as a family organization to your county, start talking to your county folks, and even county people would tell me about the state's things that I could go to. So, you know, what it is just being seen. You have to be present. You have to go to things like at my county, I went to the children's cabinet meetings, and I learned all kinds of things that were happening even across the state at the children's cabinet meetings in Allegheny County. So, you know, you just have to put yourself out there and get to know people. And it just kind of, I feel like it happens. If you're inquisitive and you're asking questions and you want to know and learn, you're going to make your way.
And just really
Just
quickly, Ruth, what is a sunshine member for those that may not know?
Okay, so the Mental Health Planning Council in Pennsylvania, if you haven't put in an application and have been voted in as a member, you can come and attend the meetings, but you're a sunshine member. And you know, you only have like, I don't know, about 10 minutes at the end of the committee meetings to say what you want to say.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly for, you know, agencies that are trying to get kind of in, there is a fine line between being like zealous and excited and assertive and aggressive. So I don't want to promote folks being aggressive, but I will also say that it is helpful that individuals like Ruth have, you know, sent emails or to, maybe it was our deputy secretary, or to, and again, it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't like, you need to do this. It was more of a, hey, this is really important to us. Can I help? Because it keeps it on their radar as well.
Yeah, I would always send letters or emails to the new deputy secretary just to introduce myself.
And I would always hear about it.
Things like that. So, you know, I mean, they're going to pay, if they see stuff enough, pretty soon they're going to say, who is this person? You know, but you got to be nice. You know, you have to not slam them, I want to say. So, you know, you just want to get to know them. You want to be a part of things. You care about the people in the state, whatever, you know. So just, you know, it's just about making connections. I really don't think I can say enough about making connections, just however that looks.
I agree with Ruth. Connections are everything. We have time for 2 more questions. So we have one up, and I'm going to challenge everybody to write 1 more question in. So if it's time is now. But Jill asks, with Medicaid now funding peer recovery separate of family peer recovery, will that help expedite the process of family peer recovery funding in the state?
It could. So for Pennsylvania, of course, we have our federal mandates and our federal laws. So in Pennsylvania, then we have our state plan or the Medicaid plan. So really that's what kind of guides us for Pennsylvania on, you know, what you can bill for, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. So for us, in a lot of cases, it's about going back and updating sometimes that state plan, which is very difficult to do. We are doing that right now. It's not fun, but it's definitely needed. So that's where we start having these discussions about, okay, what has changed nationally? And how can we change our Pennsylvania state plan to be in line with the initiatives and the work that we're doing? So for example, I'm working on the state plan, but only around peer services. So yes, it never hurts, but it is a process.
Okay, and the very last question we'll take today is, how did National TA help you? I feel kind of self-promoting here, but that's the question. What did they do to
Well,
help
let
you?
me tell you. Well, let me promote you guys, Gail. So I was literally out there looking around saying like, oh my gosh, who do I go to? Like, I want some guidance. And I happened to Gail and Lachelle through some of my research, and I just reached out, and I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that I wanted to get some information nationally, so it was, I fell into a blessing because again, that group sat with us. And as I was going through and like trying to build the steering committee and what are my next steps and here's this barrier, that barrier, when do I cut it off? I could talk it through with folks at the national level. So Gail and Lachelle were talking to me about nationally, this is what they're discussing. Nationally, this is what they're doing. This is what other states are doing. This is what we would recommend. And they didn't have a stake in Pennsylvania necessarily. So it was nice for them to be able to say, now, Treasurer, have you thought about this? Where perhaps I hadn't because I was too close to it.
Yeah.
So that constant, being able to go back and hold meetings and debriefings and, hey, what do I do at the next meeting was invaluable.
And I have to say for my part in that is that when I seen Gal's face, I was relieved because I've known Gal for years now and been to many Federation conferences with her and all of that. So it was really nice to see her face and I knew she would be bringing some good stuff to what we were doing.
It's all about connections. I think that's the theme of today's webinar. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Treasurer and Ruth, for those kind words too. But this has been, for me, a walk down memory lane that this is so important to our family-run orgs to really be able to understand, make those connections, and actually grow and sustain their family-run organization. So I really appreciate this has been critical. Following up, I hope everybody else enjoyed this event as much as I did. Thank you, Ruth and Treasurer again. A special thanks to Dr. Linda Goggin, NASDAQ Principal Investigator, and the NASDAQ team, and Gina Fitzgerald here for helping me today. I hope our event went as smooth as possible, and we hope to see you in March. March, by the way, is going to be really good. We are bringing in CIT, and we are going to have some familiar faces with us talking about their children and their children's interaction with police and law enforcement, and how lots of law enforcement organizations now are taking CIT, and you'll learn what that means, and really de-escalating along with 988. I couldn't recommend it, so I hope more than going and enjoying the March presentation. So we'll see you there. But for today, look for a follow-up email in 3 to 5 days. And again, March 15th, Family Supporting Crisis Intervention Team Training. See, they read what CIT means. We'll see you all again next month. And thank you. And remember, as you exit out, please take the survey. That just helps us and lets SAMHSA know we're doing an okay job. So thank you very much. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Treasurer and Ruth, you can leave. Gina and I will stay on so people can get the survey.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in 15 minutes if you want to join the debrief.
All the debrief, okay.
Thank you, everyone. We'll stay on for a couple of minutes so you can exit out and take the survey. And thank you, Gina. You were a big help today. You're on mute.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Please, as you exit out, remember to take the survey. You'll be brought to a survey place so you can answer the questions. And after you take the survey, you'll be brought to another spot where you can get a certificate of attendance. As you exit out, you'll be brought to take a survey. We'd appreciate it if you could fill that out. And once you finish the survey, you'll be brought to another spot where you will get your certificate of attendance. I appreciate all of you for attending. Thank you. I'll see you in 15 minutes.
Okay.
We will be closing this Zoom in 4 minutes. So please take the time now to exit out and answer our survey. We will be closing this Zoom in 3 minutes. Please take the time now to leave the meeting and answer the survey. We will be ending this Zoom in exactly 60 seconds. Please, if you can, close out on your own so you can be taken to the survey. Thank you very much.